Okay, we're going to be working on the box pleat. For this sample, you're going to need the pattern piece 21B. Pleats are soft or crisp folds of fabric that provide fullness in desired areas of garments. They are generally slightly wider than tucks. If you can look at your pattern piece, there are markings that you need to notice. The first marking is the place on fold. So when you cut this pattern piece out, you want to make sure that you're placing your pattern piece on the fold of the material. The other markings that you want to note are going to be the lines and the arrows. The lines and arrows are going to show you which way you're going to be pulling your pleat in order to complete the box pleat. When we mark this, you'll be using tracing paper and a tracing wheel. Once you cut your material out, you're going to see that you have one long piece of material that is connected because we placed the pattern piece on the fold based on the markings on our pattern piece. We now want to transfer over our pattern markings onto the material. So you're going to lay your pattern piece onto the material. You are going to be using tracing paper and a tracing wheel. You want to pick tracing paper that's going to show up on the material. So in this case, I'm using white because my material is pink. You will put your tracing paper face down, lay your pattern piece back on top. Now, there's two types of lines here. We have a solid line and we have dotted lines. The way that I like to indicate the difference between the two is I make my solid lines longer and my dotted lines shorter. So we can go ahead and transfer these lines onto our pattern piece. Make sure you press pretty firmly so that they transfer. Now I get to a dotted line. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter, so I'm not going to go the whole length of the dotted line. Solid line, I'm going to go the whole length. Solid line, I'm going to go the whole length. Now we're at the place on fold. In order to continue marking our material, we are going to have to fold your pattern over. Because it's a place on fold, you're literally just taking it and flipping it straight over. You'll move your tracing paper down. Again, you can see now the markings from the opposite side, and you're going to transfer these markings onto your material. Again, firmly press. I am giving the solid lines a longer marking, the dotted lines a shorter marking. And now when I take this off, you should be able to see the lines that I marked on our material. So we're halfway done with the marking. We still have one more thing on this pattern piece that we need to pay attention to, and that is the direction of the arrows. The direction of the arrows is going to tell us which way we want to pull our folds. This is going to allow us to form our pleats in the correct manner. So to do this, I'm going to be using a marking pencil or marking marker to indicate which way my arrows are pointing. Using a marking pen, I'm going to indicate which way the arrows are pointing. So looking at my pattern piece, I laid it underneath. I'm going to indicate this arrow is going this way. This is an invisible or air-soluble marker, so once it sits out in the air for a while, the actual marks will go away. This arrow is going this way. This arrow is going in. This arrow is going out. You're also going to start noticing a pattern that the long lines are going to go into the short lines. Now we get to this fold line. Again, we have to flip this over, and you're going to continue to mark the lines. So This arrow goes in. This arrow goes in. And that arrow goes out. So now we have our markings transferred onto our pattern piece. We're going to be able to start pinning now, which is going to allow us to prepare for sewing. If I zoom in, you can see the arrows and how I'm using them to indicate which way I'm going to be pulling the fold. So if I pull this down, you can see the arrows are going to show me how I'm going to fold. So in this case, you're going to see that this line here is going to go into the center. This line here is going to also get pulled into the center. The reason I know that is because I'm following my arrows. To start pinning my box pleats, I'm going to follow the arrows. So I'm going to start here. I pinch or fold on that line and pull to the side. This one is going to be nice and even. Put a pin here to hold it into place. So that's going to be your first pleat. You're going to continue following down, so you'll pull the long line into the short line, long line into the short line. Follow your arrows for direction. So I fold, I pinch, fold on that long line, bring it into the short line, put a pin to secure this fold. Fold on the long line, follow my arrow. The two of them are going to meet in the middle. So they're not overlapping, but they're meeting in the middle. Secure with a pin. So your first pleat here meets in the middle, nice and even. You're going to continue this method all the way down your material. Pinch on the line, follow your arrow into the fold line. Secure with a pin. Pinch on the line, follow your arrows, have the two meet. Secure with a pin. So you're going to start seeing these pleats are being formed. You can see now that we have 4 pleats, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what this has done is created some fullness. So you took a long piece of material, and with each of these pleats it creates a little bit more fullness in your garment, and it's going to allow a little bit more movement. You are now going to prepare to sew these pleats into place. So you want to secure them with actual stitching, and we'll go to the sewing machine to do this. We're going to be working to complete the box pleat. What we'll be doing at the machine is making sure we are using a basting stitch. The basting stitch is a stitch of a length of 4, so make sure you adjust your machines to the stitch length of 4. You are going to be basting along the top and then down the legs of each pleat. Basting stitches are meant to be taken out. These are just going to hold the pleats into place. For our sample purposes, we plan on leaving the basting stitches in. You could also, in your garment, do an edge stitch, which is a permanent stitch, if you wanted to hold the pleats into place. Either one is fine. It is a designer's personal preference. So, with a basting stitch, we are not going to backstitch. You are going to do a basting stitch across the top and down each individual leg. Because we want the basting stitch to be caught in the next seam, we're going to line it up to do 1/4 of an inch, which is even with your presser foot. Make sure you pull out your pins as you get to them. And do a basting stitch all the way down the top of your pleats. I am using my left hand to hold all of my pleats down and into place so they keep nice and uniform as I sew. I'm going to stitch right off the end because I am doing a basting stitch. So right now you can see the basting stitch across the top. I'm now going to come and do a basting stitch down each one of the legs. You want to stay nice and close to the edge. So you're looking to do about 1/8 of an inch. This is still basting. Come down about 1 inch. This does not need to be perfect. Trim your threads as you go. When you do pleats, you're going to have a lot of thread. So you want to trim it as you go so that it does not tangle and cause knots within your material. Line up about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Pull it off and trim your threads. This is what it's going to look like when you stitch down both legs. Do this for the rest of the sample until you have basting along the top and along each of the legs. Once you are finished, your sample should look like this, with a basting stitch along the top and then basting stitches down each of the pleat legs. This is holding everything in place, and your box pleat sample is complete.